I am working on a series called Jordan Casillas and the Age of Monsters, the first book of which is The Serpent's Rise, which is due to be released on September 23rd, 2025.
Remember the date, September 23rd. Okay, so I believe that we are live now. Welcome in, Ever Engine. My name is Sam Liebl. Here on Substack, I publish a few different things, but one of which is the fantasy serial novel that's sort of trying to, find itself on the internet called Eathel the Bastard. But more importantly, I'm joined on this literature and fiction focused podcast, especially with a view to social media, by LM Sypher. I think we met on TikTok, but if it's okay with you, LM, I'd like to kick it over to you and maybe give us just a really quick, brief intro of who you are and what you're working on right now.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for that, Sam. So I'm LM Sypher, and I am also an author. I am working on a series called Jordan Casillas and the Age of Monsters, the first book of which is The Serpent's Rise, which is due to be released on September 23rd, 2025.
Remember the date, September 23rd, 2025. What's that experience been like, or can you just share a little bit about how that's being released? Indie, what's that story? I've never had anything published outside of Substack.
So I did decide to go the indie route. One of
Mm-hmm.
the things that I found was that unless you have a huge following on a social platform, be it Substack or TikTok or what have you, it is difficult to break into the publishing market, especially for your debut. So this will
Yeah.
be a debut novel. And because of some of the themes that it covers, themes of diversity and intersectionality, I really wanted to make sure that I had creative control and that nobody was going to be policing me, and that the voices of the editors that I wanted in the room were the ones that I curated rather than ones that were assigned to me by a publishing company. Not that I don't trust publishing companies or anything like that, but just because, again, I wanted to be the end all be all of what was put out at the end of this process.
Mm-hmm.
So I did with an indie publishing route. And that's been really exciting because it means that I've gotten to design my own cover and put my illustration skills to the test. It means that, again, I've got to go through the process of consorting with my own editors and finding people whose opinions I really value and who I think add a lot to my story. So it's been a very sharp learning curve, but an excellent adventure all the same.
I can imagine. It's interesting because I feel like the novel is one of the few art forms that you can have complete and total control over. You can have this. I think that's a little bit why it appeals to me. Music, you can be a solo musician, but you can't really make a movie on your own. At least the ones, not really one that most people would want to watch. But the novel, you've got this complete conceptual control. Is that, to me, that kind of speaks to me that you have a really strong vision for your novel. Yeah.
And of course, there are things that have had to change in the course of the editing process, but overarchingly, there are themes that I want to hit on and subject matter that I would like to stay intact. And I find sometimes when you're trying to break outside the mold of the Western canon, it can
Mm.
be difficult to find your footing. And this is something that I'm very passionate about and something that I think is like an important story to tell right now. And so I'm pretty gung ho to do it one way or the other. And I think the world can decide whether or not it's a worthwhile story.
Yes, of course. I love that attitude. You said break it out of the Western canon. Now, if I'm familiar with your work, and I will confess, I have not, right now I'm reading on Substack. I do like to, I'm focused when I read on Substack. It's a little bit overwhelming. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I kind of get inundated. I read kind of the odd thought piece. I've complained about it in the past, but I like the cultural essays too. But right now I'm reading by Nocturnal Narrator, the Olivia series. I don't know if she's popped up in your feed at all, but I do want to plug Nocturnal Narrator, who I think is really, really cool, and her Olivia series is great. Just shouting out other indie authors. But the thread that I needed to follow was what were it can be just a little bit overwhelming, but what kinds of stuff do you publish on Substack? Do you publish excerpts? What has Substack been like for you? Or we don't have to focus on Substack, but just a thought.
So I guess just really quickly, for me, it's mostly been publishing short stories. Sorry, go ahead. Did you have a
I was here. I put my finger on a loaded term, Western canon, Mesoamerican, right? That's what we were talking about. Maybe we can touch on that. I'd like to focus on like maybe I'm interested in breaking out of canons. I'm interested in breaking out of, being maybe not being shot out of canons, but breaking out of
Howard?
inherited things, arbitrary things that we've inherited that don't necessarily fit or maybe shouldn't fit with the way that we live today. But how do you define the Western canon? Where does this fit or not fit into it? And why does that matter?
I would probably define the Western canon as the popular culture and holdovers of the United Kingdom, the United States.
We can
Um,
say it, old dead white men. I think as a white man, I can say it's almost completely old dead white men.
I would say culture that's been synthesized because it's not entirely old dead white men, but it is cultures that have been taken out of their historical context and given a whitewashed treatment.
Hmm.
Uh, I will forever be proclaiming the fact that our understanding of ancient Greece is not the true history. Um, in my undergraduate career, I was focusing in art history as my minor, and I ended up getting to do a stint of archaeology in Athens. And my focus was Proto-Archaic Athens, which is
Mm.
really um, the move from the Dark Ages into Archaic Athens. And so this would have been pre-classical era, pre-Parthenon. And what you see is that glimmering white marble sculptures that we see today was not really what this culture would have looked like. And so
Mm-mm.
that's what I mean by like Western synthesized canon, is that a lot of it has been removed from its cultural context and been reformatted in order to fit a certain narrative.
Hmm.
So, yes, old dead white men. But that being
Yeah.
said, with my history, being a research historian and an art historian, I have been exposed to several different cultures across the world. And one of my favorite art historical cultures is Mesoamerica.
And
And
it's beautiful, beautiful art. It really is.
it's
I mean,
fantastic.
I'm only in a passing way familiar with it. I'm sure that if I were a tourist in, the countries that are there today, I would be like, "Oh my goodness, that looks exact." And you would be there being like, "No, this is not. This is." But anyway, not in an educational way, but
Um,
just from what I've seen, very
mm,
beautiful.
I
Yes.
I think it's fantastic.
Hey,
And
PM Dunn, welcome in.
when I got the idea for Jordan Casillas and the Age of Monsters, I knew that what I wanted to focus on was world mythology. And
Hmm.
so I didn't want to
Because
focus.
we're so narrow. Even on Substack, I feel like, and I will totally pass the mic back over to you, but why is, as a fantasy guy, why is it just all like, why do we even need elves? And I've got nothing against elves, but like Tolkien himself brought elves into what they were. And we're not beholden to Tolkien. We're not beholden to these things. And anyway, I get off on a tear on that, but we're so limited when we only look I thought I was radical when I was doing a fantasy based on the Roman Empire. And that is such a narrow frame when you think about it. Like I'm taking it out of the Arthurian and oh, here's my big thing. It's going to be like, only now do I realize like how narrow, myopic my world was. So Mesoamerican is something I've never heard discussed in a fantasy context.
And the idea behind it was, again, not to focus exclusively on Mesoamerican culture or history or myths and legends, but when I decided that I wanted my main character to be Aztec and to
Hmm.
investigate the myths and legends of Aztec folklore, what I understood from that was that I, as a white person, needed to A, educate myself really quickly, and
Hmm.
B, needed to bring a level of authenticity to the novel that was going to be beyond the scope of solely my research, which is why I do have a cultural editor on the project, which is why have brought it to sensitivity reading as well. Because when you have a cast that is entirely marginalized or BIPOC in some way, what you want to make sure is that you're hitting every note that you want to hit. Because if people want to be mad about my book, I want them to be mad for the reasons that I choose rather
Hmm.
than short sightedness on my part. And so when I'm focusing on the myths of Mesoamerica, I really hope to do it in an appreciative way rather than an appropriative way and weave again that thread of authenticity throughout the book.
I love that. But I worry I'm so fragmented in my, we're touching on process, I suppose, a little bit, but I'm so fragmented in I worry that I might get caught up in all of these things, you know, cultural editors, sensitivity editors. What am I? I'm sure that there's a way that this all runs smoothly and everybody works together well. So how do you not get overwhelmed by all of these different things coming into play?
Well, I think that it really depends on where in the process you bring in editorial oversight. For me, I didn't ask for help until I was incredibly close to done.
Hmm.
So once I had gotten the story after three separate drafts into a place where I was comfortable with it, where I was confident in it, and where I knew I was telling the story I wanted to tell,
Hmm.
that's when, hey, can I get an extra set of eyes on this? And again, there were things that needed to shift, but it was at that point things that I could live with because
Hmm.
I knew the direction. And so at that point in time, it was just, okay, here's the slight touches that need to be adjusted in order to get this over the finish line.
That's I love that. I'm looking here at I'll keep a log of the chats, but there's something a little anecdote that I wanted to add into that about the development process and where you bring in the feedback. So in my book, Eathel the Bastard, I have a magical system that's based on classes kind of as the DSM criteria. They're turned into strengths just as much as their disabilities. So the main character has an inner monologue that's reminiscent of some of my experience with obsessive compulsive disorder and how that all works. Now, when I first started concepting out how this might work, I went on to Reddit and it was sort of like, it was like a roast my magic system type thread. And I explained it as well as I could. And I really wanted to emphasize, like, think about the X-Men a little bit, right? The X-Men, they are within the world of Marvel, marginalized people. I know that not many marginalized people get to live with Professor X in the big mansion, but like they're kind of a marginalized class, and that's kind of the theme of the story. But at the same time, they're under the control of their powers. While at the same time, they have these literal superpowers. And I wrote all this out in what I thought was a very considered way onto Reddit and was like, here's my magical system. And I thought they were going to come in and be like, this is so nuanced. And then everybody was just like, don't do this. This is irresponsible. Don't do this. And I made as clear as I could, like, this is based on my personal experience as, being diagnosed and living with these things. And now when people read the little bits and pieces of it, they're just like, oh my God, this is so great. It's almost like, when Daredevil came out, the blind superhero Daredevil is from the Marvel world, and I'm not a crazy Marvel guy, but or too into Marvel, but a lot of people were kind of worried, like, oh no, are we exploiting? Like, is this gonna like insult people? Blindness? Is this like a gimmick or something? And then Stan Lee, the guy who came up with all these classic characters, was like, you know what? We got these letters in from orphanages, and those were the things that most affected me. These orphanages that helped blind and visually impaired children, and they were like, this is all the kids want to read because they see themselves reflected back in this. So it was sort of one of those things. I feel like if Stan Lee or whoever came up with with whoever helped him come up with them said, all right, a blind superhero, a visually impaired superhero, that, and a lot of people might come back and be like, how would that work? That doesn't make any sense. But once you have a chance to flesh the character out and the world and show it the texture and nuance, people start to change. I wonder if that might be a little bit reminiscent of what your ethos is.
I think so. And I think also that sometimes we are encouraged not to try things that might rock the boat,
Hmm.
especially if you are not within the community that you are writing about. And I think that when you have a story that you feel passionately about telling and you feel that you have enough empathy to do it credibly, then it is okay to try, so long as you are receptive to the advice of others and you solicit that advice in a way that is uh, non exploitive, which
Hmm.
is why instead of going like the beta reader route, I said, no, I'm going to find a sensitivity reader and I'm going to pay them for their time and effort as one of my editors.
Hmm. And you, and that's enhanced your work, you think, like made it more than it could be.
Oh, totally. No, 100%. And not only that, but it gave me the confidence in my own work as well, because there were certain things that I was unsure about. And my editor was able to put concretely what needed to change in order to, again, hit those notes that I was trying to hit. So, if anything, it just underscored all of the points that I was trying to make in a more effective and empathetic way, which I
Hmm.
think as a society we need more of. I think that we need more connection.
I think we do too. And writing a novel is such a lonely pursuit, and you get so far deep into your own head, and you experiment, at least I do, with ideas and concepts that don't work out. But it's a gift to have someone else kind of come in and shine a little bit of light around. And I don't know, in my case, maybe kick away some of the cobwebs or something, but also kind of just be like, you know, that idea you're too married to. This idea you need to flesh out, or, oh, hey, this other thing is completely different. You should focus in on that. One thing I wanted to maybe ask, and I don't want to shift the conversation too much, but as you did your research, what are some of the big misconceptions that people have about Mesoamerican culture? What are some things you learned?
I think one of the bigger misconceptions that people have, especially coming from the Western lens, is the understanding that there is no monolith in Mesoamerican culture,
Right.
especially because when you break it down, you have several indigenous groups and tribes that all have different understandings of myths and legends, that have different interpretations, even different language structures. And
Hmm.
so, one of the most important things was clarifying exactly what we're talking about and what the context of it might be. And then to turn around and be able to shed some light on that for other people, because especially when you talk about something that maybe people haven't read the most about in the past, I don't
Hmm.
expect people to be able to pronounce like Tezcatlipoca or Huitzilopochtli. I don't expect people to
I
be able.
think that may be the first time I've heard those words spoken out loud.
Those are Aztec gods.
Yeah, they definitely get wild with how long they make the names.
And a lot of it is because those names are like conjunctions of other
Sure.
words. So, Huitzilopochtli is the great hummingbird of the South.
And I don't mean that in a derisory way. I'm saying if you've got a god, that that's our word. I think is too short. You know, I love the bigger. And real quick before I see everybody's comments, and I want to make it interactive too as possible. But PM Dunn says, I believe it's PM Dunn. By the way, pick him up. He's a good author on here. I haven't had a chance to read his stuff. Like I said, I don't want to be I don't want to be fronting about the stuff that I do read. But PM Dunn has been a cool guy to get to know. But definitely one to watch. I believe it's okay to write from the perspective of other cultures so long as you show the full range of the subject's humanity. I can get on board with that.
That, yes, absolutely.
And welcome in Prince of Persia, if anyone's still here. Robert, PM Dunn, all you guys, yes. And how about, and if we don't need to stay on this topic or anything, but I love history, and I think it shows us more how we're similar often than how we're different. But since you mentioned Aztec earlier, we kind of covered the fact that, okay, Mesoamerica is not a monolith, right? Maybe could I ask, what are some of the misconceptions about Aztec culture during the time period that you're writing in?
So it is contemporary. My story is contemporary.
Okay.
It does draw on myths and legends. So maybe some misconceptions about like Aztec folklore. I would say that it gets a bad rap as being bloodthirsty,
I mean,
and
that's definitely my misconception of it. When I think Aztec, I'm sorry, I think of the sacrifice.
and
I'm not
sacrifice.
saying that's right. I'm just saying that's my immediate thought. Educate me, civilize me.
So sacrifice was an incredibly important facet of Aztec life and folklore, specifically in the binding of the years, which we don't have to go too deeply into this because it is a very long but awesome story. But essentially, the human creation myth in Aztec folklore is that the gods got together, the gods of the 13 heavens, they got together and they put all of their blood together in one bowl. And
Okay.
from that bowl, humanity was born. And because humans bear the blood of the gods, our blood becomes sacrificial to them. And so, in order to enact certain things, when you are down here, whether it be rain or a proper harvest or even the sun returning for another 52 years, which is the binding of the years, you need blood in order to enact that sacrifice.
Hmm.
So once you understand where the sacrifice comes from and why it's important, it helps to reframe it in your mind and take away some of the violence associated with it and to see another culture from a perspective of faith and community and even necessity rather than how colonialization practices have painted this culture and
I think,
to
yeah. Sorry.
humanize people of the past.
100%. I think just up there about PM Dunn's comment, when I'm twisting it a little bit, but I think that this still maintains kind of the integrity of the message. When you're looking at people who are, have a different culture, a different background, you have to be acknowledge their whole range of humanity because that's all included in there. There might be things that we look upon and we have to analyze our own misconceptions. And I just, it's an exhausting, but it's a worthwhile and important thing to be doing because if you're not, I think at least if I'm not doing that, I'm stagnating, and this is not the time to be stagnating in that regard. I don't know if I'm making any sense or not, but fascinating discussion. I'd love to maybe pivot unless you have any more thoughts on this, to some of the things that we were talking about on TikTok, right? If it's okay, I really thought that your messages that you sent over to me after one of my lives on TikTok were great places to start. And I don't have to read them aloud or anything, but like, uh, I want to be reminded of what exactly they were. But what's your TikTok origin story while I look that up? How did you come to TikTok? Because you seem like much more savvy with it than I am. And I only came earlier this year.
Um, I used TikTok independently in my personal pursuits for a couple years, and I didn't have a lot of growth, but growth also wasn't my focus.
Hmm.
Um, by trade, I'm a marketer. So
Okay.
I do graphic design and I do social media. And so I'm very familiar with algorithm building and I'm familiar with platform voice and marketing to an audience. So when it comes to TikTok, I also joined just earlier this year in Book Talk. And the reason that I came back to the app after having initially gotten rid of it the first time that it was shut down back in January,
Hmm.
but I realized that that's sort of where the market was. And I knew that I wanted this book to be successful. And so I started building content and platform on TikTok. And I think I got the 1,000 followers that I did in about a month. And then I was like, okay, I can finally rest. And I took a break from posting every day. And I took a break from, like gaming the algorithm. And so now that I do have sort of like a comfortable platform there, I've been using more select marketing tactics and pushing release dates more so than just the elephant gun approach where you blast out your content to everybody who will listen.
That's for I think to the detriment of I have to apologize to Book Talk. That's a little bit what I've been doing, but I am now pulling back. I think that I don't know. I hadn't been on social media for most of my life, believe it or not, and then I got on it as a means to an end. I was doing some research and pretty much, hey guys, greetings everyone, peace and meta to all. We have a wide ranging discussion here. I am going to have to plug in my phone somewhere else. These lives really zap they take a lot out of the phone. But we're talking about TikTok, and I don't know. Do you think that creators go through TikTok eras? I was thinking about this a little bit earlier, but like you get on when I got on, I was casual, and then I got intentionally goofy. I described my style for a while as strategically cringe. That was my brand. Not a great brand, by the way, but it was at least something semi-authentic. But like you just sort of see people kind of go off on different paths. They start to change their backgrounds. They start to improve. Is totally out of left field question, but something I'm wondering.
No, I think that that is organic to any social media platform when you are trying to build your marketing audience, because you're going to go through, especially if you don't have a strategy in place to begin with. Um,
Hmm.
Not to say that you didn't have a strategy in place.
No, it was just like, hey, that's where I'll need to plug in my phone and take these out. So I think it'll just making sure that. But yeah, I didn't have a strategy. No, I just started. I was like, that's where the readers are. Have to go there. I don't
And
even have a book yet. Kind of, you know.
you've got at least a solid start. I will say that. I know you have your first 5 chapters up on Substack and other places.
First 8. Oh, dang it. Okay. Are you still on?
I'm still here.
Great. Okay. Tech. It's not a Substack live until something tech goes crazy. Anyway, go ahead. Take it away. You were giving us your TikTok origin story, and we were talking a little bit about how, you know, the creators develop over time there.
Exactly. So without a firm strategy in place, if you're not already aware of what your brand is going to be, what your execution is going to be, and what your voice is going to be, there's going to be a certain amount of trial and error as you begin to build that back for yourself and as you begin to understand where you fit within your market. This is something that isn't unusual. It's not even unique to social media. It happens in the wider business world all of the time. That's why people spend millions and millions of dollars on brand building and what's called positioning within your market.
Yeah. Well, that definitely was. I feel like I'm trying to be a case study for growing your business or your audience, your. Well, we all have to. I posted about this on TikTok this morning. What are we going to get into when you have to be an influencer before you're an author?
And we're
And
there.
I'm not saying that's you're locked into that, but do you get where I'm going with that? Like if I didn't even barely bother contacting traditional publishing, um, I'm sort of like going the route of indie need to build an audience myself, right? That I mean, are we ready for the kind of writing that's going to come out of that? Is it going to be better? I just think about that.
I think that when you have people who have to build the audience before they can platform their content, you are going to get a very specific kind of person who
Hmm.
can't. Obviously, you're going to have one offs where somebody is wildly successful overnight, where something goes viral and all of a sudden somebody is platformed, somebody is signed, somebody receives a book deal. We've seen that book talk already with the man who would sit in his tractor. I'm sorry, I don't actually know his username, but he would sit in his tractor and he would give book reviews, but suddenly he got a 2 book deal. And
Yeah.
so this virality is instantly connected to results. And I think that for the modern creator, the modern or even sort of midway person who might not have the experience with social media, might not have the experience positioning themselves, that's going to be really difficult to break into.
I agree.
I'm not sure what the future of that is going to look like. I'm not sure that it's a future that I'm excited for, especially with the rise of AI and things as well, because I think what we need right now is as much human creativity as we can get. And the fact that human creativity is being siloed in these channels of who has the biggest follower count, I think it's inauthentic to the nature of creation. Because when we think about how stories spread, think about how, like public miasma spreads, it story
Public miasma, great word, right? Miasma is like not a very good smell, right?
um well, a miasma, yes, it can be like not a good smell, but it's also sort of just like an ever-present amalgamation of things, like
I'm
an
always
ether
gonna
or like
ask what a word means, so I'm sorry.
you're right. I'm using it in this case more like to say like a zeitgeist.
Oh no, I mean like I've been wrong about crazy. I've been wrong about words all the time. I just wanted to be like, have I been using miasma wrong?
No, 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 not necessarily.
For
Um,
all those conversations I have using miasma,
it's a great word. I think
it's a
it's
great.
used in four contexts.
I'll tell
Like,
you, every other day I want to use the word perfunctory. I don't know why, but I just want to use the word perfunctory. But I don't know, man. Outside of book talk or other places, it's just going to get you kind of some side eye.
listen, you can be as pretentious as you like in the coffee shop. They don't
That's
care.
right. That may be my next move. But yeah, no, go ahead. Like we've got this. I think too. Like I know that I've got this like obsteperous. That's a good one. Yes, obsteperous. But howdy from me and TK and Lisa too. Obsteperous is a great one. I remember the first time I read that word. It was in a Noam Chomsky screed, and Noam Chomsky's just the best. He's always just like spouting truths over here, just like, but that they're okay. We don't need to do my Noam Chomsky impression. This is don't want this to go too far south, but we've got a big change coming to TikTok, right? I've been posting a little bit about this. I just researched it before we started, but this is a seismic change. I don't feel a lot of people are talking about it. Maybe you disagree. I'd love to hear your take on it. But if for people that don't know, I'll just give the quick rundown. For people that don't know, there was an act that was passed, and this was under the Biden administration. It was called the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversaries or Foreign Adversary Applications Act. But this act was signed into law, one of the last big laws that, or one of the last laws, period, that then President Biden signed into law. Then it actually, before it gets enforced, there's, the Trump administration comes in that's now back in power. And there was a series of bans, right? That they pushed, or there was a ban that they were going to, that was pursuant to the law, but the Trump administration kept pushing out the ban for a variety of reasons. There have been some freedom of information requests that are actually kind of juicy that have come out between the Justice Department and TikTok and Apple, and some interesting things that have come out of that. The point is, although it feels like TikTok is here to stay because there's this ban and then and then the ban goes away and then there's a ban and there's a ban goes away. We're getting to a point where I think that that's not, there's a hard line in the sand of September 17th is when they have to have this functioning app. And already next month, we're going to, as part of the law, TikTok had to build its own or has to sell TikTok US, which is one of its subsidiaries, to a company that's based in the United States, based on reporting from Reuters. And I know I'm not a reporter, I'm not a journalist. I'm just, everybody go check your facts. Reuters is the source that I'm relying on most here, but I do want to highlight that there's a dispute. Reuters says that TikTok is actively working on an app codenamed M2 that is trained exclusively on US data and will be here in the United States as like, served, owned with the algorithm. What that means is this TikTok algorithm that's kind of magical that's been the secret to its success, is not coming over to the United States. China will never, it's a state secret, this algorithm. They will never part with it. At least that's what Reuters is reporting. For its part, TikTok or ByteDance has said Reuters is not reporting correct information. Like this is their words are factually inaccurate. Now, Reuters is standing by its reporting, and I also, just as a person, Reuters is to me one of those that's kind of deep beyond dispute. It's just a source that I trust a lot. That said, we've also got this ByteDance comment of, no, this isn't happening. I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything, but I think that one thing that we can agree on at least is that surveillance is kind of going to be a constant either way, right?
I would agree. I think that it's sort of the nature of the technical era in which yourself. When you engage with the internet on any level, you should expect some level of surveillance, whether it's your cookie track.
It's important to remember, y'all, nothing is anonymous on the internet. Nothing
Nothing.
is truly anonymous on the internet.
Absolutely. And we know that data mining has been a thing for well over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen even American companies getting hot water with it in the past. And so I think it really does come down just to the question of who do you want with your data and how do you want to appear online?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. TikTok at once feels like a place where there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of international things. At the same time, I have had content rights violations and videos taken down. And not for anything super incendiary, but there was just, sort of like sometimes sometimes you use a piece of music in the wrong way. But one time I just talked about a certain topic in a certain kind of way that it didn't like. And I'll tell you, woe unto you. But here's the point that I'm trying. You can find that exact same video on my Instagram. No, nothing happened to it. It's right up there, right? So I kind of A/B test these things a little bit. Same exact video, started on TikTok, and then I take the TikTok video, post it on Instagram, and no problems on Instagram, even though the subject matter hadn't changed. So, but it wasn't cool with TikTok. And woe unto you. Woe unto you if you are on TikTok and you criticize the Chinese government in any way. So, just I'm not saying that that makes censorship okay. I think that censorship is almost always a bad thing, but, you know, there's, there's different priorities for different, I'm not, the US I don't trust anymore, but sometimes I feel like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And you have to, that's the importance of keeping your own sovereign kind of territory. And all I mean by sovereign is I own samliebl.com. That's my domain name, right? And that's where I base my Substack on, my Blue Sky on. That's just my take. I want to turn it over to you at least a little bit.
I think for me, when I engage with TikTok, when I engage with Instagram, I am aware that I build a brand.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, there are things that I choose not to talk about because I know what may or may not file feathers, what may or may not have reported. Because what you also have to understand is that there's also the groupthink mentality that people can report your posts if they find them offensive. And so it's not just surveillance from, the overarching organization, like Big Brother kind of surveillance. It's also community surveillance where people who find your content unsavory for any reason that they might find it offensive.
And weaponized surveillance in a way. What if someone decides they don't like you and then finds some old post or, there are ways, I mean, if you post something horrible, you've posted something horrible, but there are ways that people can weaponize good intentions to get your stuff taken down, right?
Absolutely. And we see it often with the cancel culture that has emerged within the last couple of years on apps like TikTok and originated from Twitter. So
Hmm.
we get the culture from Twitter originally, which is of course now X. But with that being said,
And it sucks, by the way. Sorry. I'm just personal opinion on X.
I have not used that application. I do not envision myself using that application in the future. It's something that I am aware of because of my job, but you will never find me on it.
Yeah. I just have it automated in my marketing stuff. Go ahead.
And absolutely, that's the other thing about it because as we as authors figure out where and how to plug and play within the market, there are going to be choices that you will make for your own brand that other people won't make. And I think that it's important that unless someone is doing something actively harmful, not to judge under other authors for how they feel the need to show up, especially when it comes to our own brands, because we're solely responsible for them. We don't have the benefit of a publisher coming in and handling things for us. And so I'm not going to tell an author not to use TikTok. I'm not going to tell an author not to use X. I just will make choices that are best for me and that everyone else is going to do the same.
Yep. I think it's one of those things where it can be liberating to be in charge of your own brand, but it can be also exhausting. And unfortunately, I think it's going to be one of those things where a smaller and smaller number of people are going to do well, and a larger and larger group of people are probably not. I hate to sound so cynical, but with the way things are going, I do think that that's going to be a consequence. And I think that maybe part of what we can do is have conversations like this. I'm a nobody, but maybe I can use some of my nobodiness that I've started to build up to build you up, and maybe in the future we can build something a little bit in our own ways. We're always going to be, I love the communities that overlap with communities. There are some communities, even within Substack, where I like some of their stuff. And yet at the same time, I'm kind of like, I know that this is not going to be for everybody. Like just because I'm reading somebody else doesn't mean that somebody else is going to be reading somebody else. But I like that patchwork of everything. Oh no, guys, it looks like we may have lost LM Sypher. Let me try to get her back. Stand by. Thanks, everybody. One love out to all of you. I'll send her a message, but we were getting close to wrapping up anyway. So, Noble Blend, welcome in. We may have to wrap it up there, but I'm going to see if I can give LM. Hey, Noble Blend. I think that we were starting to get a little bit toward the end, but LM, welcome back in. We've been here for, close to an hour. I think I want to just wrap up by saying, hey, it's not a Substack live until thank you very much. It's not a Substack live until something goes a little bit awry. But I was joined by LM Sypher. One thing that I love about Substack is that it makes it really easy to subscribe, and you can see LM right here in the comments. Click on her. I'm going to follow her. It doesn't look like I was following her, and just send her just in case I want to join, just in case she can get through that one. But if not, I'll go ahead and wrap things up. But thank you so much for joining me, LM Sypher. Please check out her work, and I'll connect with you after with the recording. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining. And we may see a lightly edited recording come out, but means a lot to me, and I'm sure to LM that you guys joined. Thank you.